Welcome to ID the Future, a podcast about intelligent design and evolution.
Hello and welcome to the ID the Future podcast. This is Casey Luskin with Discovery Institute. We are broadcasting from Seattle, Washington for Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture. And once again, we have with us today an esteemed guest, Dr. Philip Skell, Professor Emeritus at Pennsylvania State University, and also a member of the National Academy of Sciences. We've had two podcasts previously with Dr. Skell in the recent podcast. The first one talked about his career as a scientist and started to talk about his journey to become a Darwin skeptic. And then the second podcast talked extensively about his views on Darwinian evolution and its value in guiding experimental research, and also finishing the story of how he became a Darwin skeptic. Dr. Skell, I want to thank you first for coming back into the show with us today. One question that I wanted to ask you, because in the past you have spoken up in favor of academic freedom for scientists to dissent from evolution or to support, say, alternatives to evolution. I recall that you signed a brief that was sent to Judge Jones in the Kitzmiller versus Dover case. It was an amicus brief where you supported academic freedom for scientists to research and investigate, non-evolutionary views. And I know there have been other instances as well where you have stood up for the rights of scientists to dissent from Darwinian evolution. I would like to maybe just ask you a little about your views on academic freedom for scientists. And maybe we can just start off with a very simple question. Let's say today that you were giving advice to a young scientist who was skeptical of Darwinian evolution, maybe even took a view very similar to yours, where whether evolution is right or wrong, it does not necessarily give us much guidance in formulating experimental research. As you're probably well aware, these kind of views can potentially, if you become vocal about them, get you in trouble in the scientific community. So what would your advice to be to a young scientist who was not tenured or maybe even had not yet finished their graduate degrees, if they were asking you, how should I go about talking about Darwinian evolution?
This is a very tricky and troubling matter for young people particularly. I first should talk about the definition of a Darwin skeptic. That could mean a variety of things, and I'd like to define it for myself, and
Sure.
Perhaps that would be useful.
Yes, please.
For young scientists, if they want to characterize themselves as Darwin skeptics, to see that there is not a misunderstanding about what their position is. And I'll do that by describing my position. I do not have the position or hold the position that Darwin theory is incorrect or correct. I think there is no good way to make that decision. And it's for that reason that I focused my attention not on whether it was correct or not, but what was its utility in helping scientists push back the frontier of biological science.
Sure.
And it's in that area that I found that Darwinian concepts plays a negligible role in pushing back that frontier. So I am a skeptic, not so much of the theory as I am of its utility in furthering the goals of the scientist. That raises the question then of what has happened in our country and perhaps other countries around the world that makes it dangerous for a young scientist to let anyone know that they may be Darwinian skeptics.
Yes.
The academic community is incredibly intolerant of anyone not paying loyalty to Darwinian ideas and have no hesitation in railroading such an individual out of the community, having him fired and making life generally miserable for such a person.
Wow.
So that for a young person to let his professors know that he might be skeptical of Darwinism, even of the variety that I've described, where one is uncertain whether this is a correct or an incorrect theory, but convinced that it is not an important theory in trying to push back the frontiers in biology. Even such a mild disowning of the Darwinian point of view is considered so dangerous among many of the professional biologists that such a person is railroaded out of the profession.
Wow.
And the best advice I can give them is, until this climate changes and there is some better sense in understanding the situation abroad, that a young prospective scientist in the biosciences keep that entirely to themselves and make it something which is not known to the academic structure on which they depend, both for their education, for their degrees, and for recommendation to positions in the future.
Dr. Skell, you had mentioned the possibility that the climate could change someday. I would like to know, have you seen the climate, the political climate over Darwinian evolution change within your lifetime and within your career? For example, maybe more specifically what I'm asking is, has it gotten more politicized? Has it gotten more hostile towards the Darwin skeptic of one type or another over the course of your observing the scientific community in your career and your life? Have you seen it get worse, or has it gotten better? What have you seen change?
It seems to me that it has deteriorated, and that it is more dangerous today for anyone to be declared a Darwinian skeptic of whatever color than it has been in the past. It's not an easy matter to judge, but that is my general impression, and it's for that reason that I advise young candidates for positions within the field to keep it hidden from public view and achieve their goals to do research within biology or teach within biology without having that matter brought up, since it will have no effect other than a negative one on denying them the opportunity to have a career within that field.
Wow. Dr. Philip Skell, those are pretty serious words. Any optimism for the future that perhaps things could get better, or are we at a pretty low state right now?
I don't see any indications that the situation is changing, except perhaps that there are some organizations, of which this Discovery Institute is one, that is attempting to alter the pattern which I have described extant within the field of biology.
Well, Dr. Philip Skell, it is really an honor to have you here in our studio. This is the third of 3 podcasts with you talking about your career, which was very esteemed, and that you were elected to the National Academy of Sciences, and you today are a member of the National Academy of Sciences, and we've learned about your journey becoming a Darwin skeptic. And it's tough to end things on a somber note like this, thinking about sort of the dire consequences that could face scientists who are skeptical of evolution. As we were talking about today, though, someone quite famous within this debate has said that science progresses one funeral at a time, and that scientific revolutions can take place when younger generations come up with new and more open ideas. And so hopefully, as a new guard of scientists comes up, maybe there will be more tolerance towards ideas that dissent from Darwin. At least that's my attempt to put a positive spin on this issue.
Thank you for the opportunity to present these ideas.
Well, we're very honored to have you in our studio, and you're always welcome to come back. This is Casey Luskin with the ID the Future podcast signing off. Thank you for listening.
Music on ID the Future comes courtesy of composer Yuri Mamchur. Visit www.yuriproductions.com and check out his latest CD, In the Harbor. This program was recorded by Discovery Institute's Center for Science and Culture. Discovery President is Bruce Chapman. ID the Future Managing Editor is Robert Crowther. And the producer is Keith Bennett. ID the Future and ID Science in the News is copyright Discovery Institute 2006. For more information, visit www.discovery.org or www.idthefuture.com.